Hey crew, Conrad coming at you once again with a classified ad review, this time on one of my favorite chassis manufacturers from the 1970s and the 1980s, J&J. That's right, we've got a two-seat mid-engine VW car that just stands out on the sand. But before we get to that, let's jump into the details. This car is brought to you by Sandcar Buy-Sell crew member Matt Eggleston. Location, San Bernardino, California, and he's asking $10,000 for this car. I think it's a bargain. Why? Just built this season, has receipts for almost every new part. This is a J&J Mid Engine sand car with a CarCraft built with paperwork, 2276 VW with IMPI 44 carbs. Built swing axle with IMPI chromoly axles. All new gauges, wiring, switches, Marvin Shaw coilover shocks, Heim joints, wheel bearings, steering rack joints, sand tires, unlimited tire setup, fuel system, and all A&N fittings. So let's jump inside and take a closer look. All right, crew, so this car is aptly named Yellow Streak, which is what everybody's going to see when you're racing up the hill. Now, I love these J&J cars, and let me point out something to you that makes it easily identifiable. First is going to be these front hairpins. So how this drops down and this drops down and the front end connects is the first thing. Second, we've got this little bit of lacing that comes up right here. Then, if we follow this line across, in the very back where the shock mount is, it loops around, leading up to an up and down bar with a B pillar. You know, a lot of the guys left the B pillars out on some of these early low slung sand slingers. That was a mouthful. A pillar is pretty standard fare for that. And then there's a drop down seat. So it's a hand formed aluminum seat and the bottom of it sticks out just a little bit to give you some headroom. But otherwise, that's a design that pretty much is timeless. Now, as far as this car is concerned, what do we have? Douglas aluminum wheels, front and back. It looks like some 1300s, maybe 1300 plus, right? Some Razorbacks to help with the steering. He did mention that it had Marvin Shaw coilover shocks, front and rear. Now, that's a huge improvement in ride quality over the standard Marvin Shaw shocks, which are more set up for drag racing. We've got a couple of, I don't know, it looks like pretty bright lights on there, but he's added on a light bar, which will definitely help at night. I see a tachometer, and I guess that's really about all. Let's jump into the next one. Is this not a great shot? I love seeing the cars out on the flats with that blue sky in the background. You know, this is pretty much where we set up on Gecko Road or whatnot. But back into this car, looks like we've got a footrest welded on, which, believe it or not, some cars don't have them. Sometimes they're bolted on. I prefer a welded on. It just adds a little bit of something. It adds a nice touch to the overall chassis. Also, what I see is, where's the Heim joint for the steering? It's way down here by your feet and going into the steering rack. Now, why this is important is because your feet are right here when you're trying to drive the car. So it's not interfering with your shoes. It's up and above. Now, what else do we have? Billet rear view mirror, which is pretty standard fare. Overall, we see that VW. I don't know what that is. He has a skeleton mounted on there. That's what that is. Okay, next. Okay, so now we have a photo of the rack and pinion and the Heim joints and whatnot. So this is what's called a stiletto rack and pinion. If you ever see these advertised in the magazines, does anybody read magazines anymore? Or you might see them up for sale online. So it's fully polished. Another extra step, right? Here's a chromed steering shaft. Now, here's another thing that I just love is look at the bar. We're using a smaller diameter bar to mount the rack and pinion. Very simple, very lightweight. A-arms, same as the A-arms. Okay, about, that's it. Okay, next. Okay, crew, so either you're an air-cooled VW guy or you're not. Or maybe you once were because you've been doing this forever. I love air-cooled Volkswagens when they're built up to 2 liters and make them breathe. They like to scream and they like top in. So if you can open up those intakes and that exhaust, they're a lot of fun. So this particular engine was built by CarCraft out of Riverside, California. Now, anybody who's anybody in the Volkswagen world knows the name CarCraft. Shop's been around since 1976 and it's actually still open to this day. So if you need any VW stuff, you're going to want to hit those folks up because they definitely know what's going on in this world. Now, straight away on his car, I see a hand-formed aluminum gas tank, which is always a nice touch. And these guys back in the 70s and 80s when these cars were being built, typically almost always had a hand-formed aluminum tank because there really wasn't anything else available. So it's a really, really nice touch. He mentioned that it has the IMPI 44 carburetors on there. Now, some people might shy away from the IMPI, figuring, hey, I want Webers or Gallardos. But IMPI basically took both of those carbs, our old ones, and re-engineered them to come out with our new 44s, which are really good right out of the box. We got some hex linkage, looks like alternator, some nice polished and aluminum pieces. Here's the A&N fittings and lines that he was talking about. External oil filter, the batteries mounted right here, real low in there. Also, this is a breather box. For those of you that don't know, these engines like to puke oil if they're not vented. So maybe you've seen one of these before and this is what it does. If you'll notice, the box is mounted up above, higher than the cylinders, higher than the engine. And the reason for that is we're venting it at the alternator stand as well as at the valve covers. You see how this is coming around? And what this does is it allows the engine to breathe. All right, enough of that lesson. Mini taillights were pretty standard back in the day. Billet clamp on, green sticker mount. But otherwise, it's a super clean package and you can't go wrong with CarCraft. All right, let's jump into the next one. Oh yeah, so look at this setup. So these are actually 1300 Sand Tires Unlimited. The difference is gonna be on a 1300 plus, there's an inch right in here. You can actually see it on the tire that's added in when they make those tires. So these 1300s are gonna spin really well. I see a set of disc brakes poking out in the back. Here's our Marvin shock coilovers in the rear. Look at the shock mounts down here. Just really, really clean. I love how these tie into this rear hoop. Mid-engine transmission setup. I'm not sure what shifter he's got on there. He even said, looks like a chrome starter. And here's this wide open stinger that makes all sorts of racket going up the hill. These cars are a lot of fun, folks. All right, so moving on to the next photo. Okay, so we've still got a shot of the rear of the car just a little bit higher up in that angle. So it shows me that it has aluminum floor in it. It also has a Lecara billet steering wheel. Here's that tachometer. And then the shifter. I'm not sure what he's got, but you know what? Chances are this is probably a hand-built mid-engine shifter that was set up back in the day. A lot of these ran these rods just like this, and they were built for every single car before there was mass-produced type shifters. All right, moving on to the next. Again, so now we've got another higher vantage point so we can see a little bit better. There's that hand-formed aluminum seat. These are just trick. I love stuff that's unique to cars, and when you hand form a seat, console, any of those aluminum pieces, it just, you know, the car has soul. That's kind of how I feel about it. But here we can see the hairpins in the front, how they match up. The way they look, again, identifier on that. Looks like we've got a chrome CNC pedal assembly on that. Switches mounted on the left side of that panel where you can reach them. A lot of guys end up mounting the switches down here, which just cracks me up because if you have your belts on, you can't reach the switches. So it's super nice to have them really close by. But otherwise, I don't really see anything else on this. Let's go on to the next. Okay, so a little bit more of a vantage point from the driver's side. The first thing that popped out to me right away was the steering hanger, because that's hand-built, welded on tubing, which is really cool. Also the interior, you can see the seat cover that was just built for this car, as well as looks like a set of 4-point harnesses. So overall, I would gather this car is probably about 112, maybe 113 inch wheelbase, with that VW running about 175 horsepower, and then the car overall is probably around 800 pounds. Yeah, it scoots. These cars are a lot of fun, and you definitely got to pick it up for the old school roundup that is held every March. Don't rename it either. A lot of people, you know, take it off of there. I like the yellow streak. I like keeping the names with the cars. But if you buy it, it's yours. Do what you like. But otherwise, let's move on to the next picture and see what we got, if any. Okay, crew, so that's it for the photos, so we'll go ahead and close this out. So what's he asking? 10,000 bucks. What do you get for that? A basically rebuilt classic J&J Mid Engine VW powered car. These sleds are a lot of fun. You won't be bummed when you pick this up. And besides, like I said, you take it out to the show or you take it out to the hill, you know, these cars just draw the Dooners in that have been doing this forever. They're a lot of fun. So otherwise, I think we'll go ahead and close this out by saying thank you for watching. See you in the dunes.